All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jerred Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
How's it going, Jerred?
Well, man, getting into some problems, Garage Gym Athlete problems. So from Gary, he said, you know, he has a struggle of trying hard, if I had to put it in a simple way. But he actually said, I went to CrossFit and I felt my ego got in the way and I tried too hard. I got tachycardia. So that's unfortunate. Then he said, alone in my garage, I can regulate better, but now I think I don't try hard enough. So haven't found that happy medium in a long time. So is that Little Red Riding Hood? Is that what that is? This one's too hot. This one's too cold. This one's just
No,
right.
that's the Three Little Bears. Red Riding Hood is when he's gets eaten by the grandma, or when the wolf eats the grandma.
See how well I know my folklore. So what Goldilocks.
Goldilocks. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
just
I
we
was about to say
we had an
there's nothing
episode on
called
that.
Three Little Bears.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so we both don't really know what the hell we're talking about, but anyway, that's what it made me think of in my head there. But what do you think, Joe? How can we help Gary out? Because I think this is a real problem, and I think that mediocrity is a slippery slope. Because there is consistency, right? Like we want everyone to be consistent in your training. But if you kind of have that nailed, your effort will matter. If consistency is taken care of and you can do the workouts, you can put in the amount of training sessions you need to each month, then you can't really just be like, oh, well, I got it done. There is a certain level of effort I do think matters. And I think that we talk about zone 2 almost too much to where people think that you should never try hard. And I don't, that's not necessarily the truth either. So how do you find that happy medium? What would you do, Joe?
Man, there's definitely a lot to unpack because his main issue is that he doesn't think he's trying hard enough. But like, what depending on what you're doing, like, what do you mean by you're not trying hard enough? Like, because there's some things that it might not feel max effort or high intensity because CrossFit's just high intensity. So if by definition, are you saying you're not trying hard enough because you're not going at a high intense like pace? Or that's kind of the first thing to address, is that like not everything you have to be at max effort. Something we've gone over a bunch of studies saying that some things are better at sub max effort. So realizing that not every single session is going to be leave you on the ground. You don't need to go leave the gym thinking that you left everything out there. So realizing that and programming wise, but I will agree that the being around people and that CrossFit setting, that very competitive nature, is one of the first things that is improved when people leave, because although it's good to have somebody push you, pushing too much and doing too much is one of the biggest downfalls of that setting. So as far as my main tip for making sure you have certain workouts that you're trying hard, that you're pushing yourself, are basically our Meet Yourself Saturdays, or something like that. I mean, we always like to plug our own stuff, but finding some sort of workout that other people are doing, that you can talk to other people about, that you can share what you're doing, tips, strategies, everything like that. Every week on the podcast, we go over our tips and strategies for Meet Yourself Saturday. Every week in our closed Facebook group, people are posting what they're doing, how they did, how much you kick their butt, the Meet Yourself Saturdays, and all of those things, and even asking questions. So having something like that, even if it's just once a week, would be a good remedy to having something to push you to have that competitive nature if you really want. And then also, like with the tracks we have, everybody, if you find people that are on the same track, then you'll find people that are posting about it in our group that are like, hey, this workout really kicked my butt. I know strength what has gone through that this past cycle. Hard to Kill has always had its times each cycle, and even shred. So all of those people will post about it, and that's how you keep that push, that driving factor, because you're finding people that are still doing the same workouts as you, but you're not necessarily right next to them and putting yourself in a compromising position.
Yeah, I think those are all great. I would say you do just have to know what you're training for. And kind of, as I was talking about at the beginning, I personally am scared of that slippery slope of like, well, I'm being consistent, and you feel like you got that gold star. And so at the end of the day, you are, so you don't need to be hard on yourself. But at the same time, you need to make sure that you're hitting the workouts correctly. So if you're following something like Garage Gym Athlete Programming, specifically the Hard to Kill track, you're going to go through every single energy system every single 30 days. So every single wave. And so you just need to know, and you'll typically know based off of work to rest times and things like that, what's what. And we label it oftentimes, but like you don't want to hit a glycolytic workout that I've programmed at a zone 2 intensity. You need to know when it's time to go hard and when it's not. So if there's something that says like sprint for a minute and a half or go hard for a minute and a half, and you're getting into zone 2, zone 3 for 90 seconds, you're doing it way wrong and you're not trying hard enough. And so you're just not getting the appropriate stimulus. A majority of your training should be in zone 2. And the reason I say that is I don't mean a majority of your training should be aerobic training. I just mean it should be in zone 2, which most strength training should be in zone 2. Even if you have a set that spikes your heart rate up to 170 or something like that, because it's a set of 10 or 12 or whatever, and it's heavy, that's going to be very short lived, because there's more resting in strength training than there is training. That's the exact opposite of like aerobic work. You're constantly moving, you don't stop. But in strength training, you're actually sitting around and resting more than you are doing work. And so most of the time that equates to strength training being a solid zone 2 session. So you should know that most of your training should be in zone 2. And then you have the, like zone 4 and aerobic thresholds type stuff in zone 5. You do want to spend some time there every single month. So like the opposite of a zone 2 run, if you could spend 30 minutes, 20 minutes running at zone 4 intensity, like running hard. And then the interval training would be the lowest end, kind of what I'm talking about. And so you just want to make sure that you're hitting those appropriately. I think Garmin does a good job of this. If you haven't looked at this, I don't know if Gary has a Garmin. And again, Garmin's not a sponsor, but I look at this personally. I have it pulled up on my phone. If you go to like your training status, and then you click on load, it'll show you your load focus over a 30-day window. And it breaks it down based off of your heart rate data on anaerobic, high aerobic, and low aerobic. Now, this doesn't quite fall in line perfectly with the energy systems and how we program them. And Garmin does heavily, gear towards aerobic based athletes like triathletes and marathon runners and stuff like that. So this isn't the gold standard here of tracking it, but it's a good way if you happen to have a Garmin, because it'll show you how much you've spent in low aerobic, how much you've spent in high aerobic, and so how much you've spent in anaerobic. And if I pull this up and I'm all low aerobic, which happens sometimes, I don't have a lot of anaerobic or high aerobic, I would know from a objective standpoint that I was not trying hard enough over the last 30 days. I wasn't getting into the intensities for long enough where I was at. And so you can turn what you feel, the subjective measure, I don't feel I'm trying hard enough, to a completely objective measure of tracking heart rate data and how much time was spent in zone 2, how much time was spent in, or let's say zone 1 to 2 to 3, and how much was spent in zone 4 and 5, looking at these things. And so you don't have to go off a feeling of not trying hard enough, but you don't need these large doses of that zone 4 and 5. Like I said, a majority can be in zone 2, and then you need to be hitting zone 4 and 5 at least once a month and for the right amount of time. So hopefully that helps. You don't have to, if you want a completely objective measure, that's the best way to do it, is just track your heart rate and see where you're at.
Yeah. Think about the long game, because training sessions should just be toward, increasing your performance, so that when you do those higher intensity sessions, you can achieve those better. And even if you do, the meet yourself Saturdays or other workouts with other people, you're more prepared to take on those sort of competitive workouts versus trying to do it all the time. So kind of giving yourself some slack a little bit to know that you're not at it to compete every time you get into the gym, but you still need to be hitting whatever the intent is of that workout.
Yeah. And the objective tracking I'm talking goes in reverse. If you're a person who's like, am I hitting too much high intensity? Like you're coming from that background or you have that mentality, you could look at your heart rate data. If you're spending 70% of your training in 4 or higher, you probably have it wrong, and you should adjust and add some lower intensity in there. So check your heart rate data and you'll know if you're on the right track or not. But That's it for this one. If you want to submit a problem, you can email us support@garagegymathlete.com, and you will tell us your problem and we'll get it answered. If you're listening on the podcast, be sure to subscribe, leave us a 5-star review and a positive comment. We really appreciate it. For everyone on YouTube, give us that thumbs up, leave us a comment. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you are aware of new things that we have coming out. Like one thing, if you're listening to this on the podcast, we do Garage Gym Athlete tours on our YouTube channel where our members are giving tours of their garage gyms. Gives you a lot of ideas, cool setups, and we get a lot of great feedback on those videos. And we don't publish those on the podcast because they wouldn't make sense. So if you're on the YouTube channel, make sure that you are subscribed. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out. That's it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching or listening. Thanks for listening to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.